I'm often asked, I go around and I lecture to college campuses. So young Americans ask me, how do you avoid divorce? Because people do understand that divorce is a very painful and difficult. Nobody gets married or nobody moves into any relationship because they hope it will break apart and end in acrimony. And certainly people don't get married because they want to be divorced. So when they ask me that question, I always answer it this way, which I said, okay, how do you avoid divorce? If neither of you go down to the courthouse and file for divorce, then it won't happen. And then they look taken aback and they say, well, no, how do we have a happy marriage? And I said, oh, well, that's a good question, and it's a noble ideal, but it's really a different question, right? One of the fundamentals of marriage, one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, what are we doing? Is marriage just a word for a celebration of a romantic relationship? Or can we actually become one flesh? Can we change our identities in a way that makes it permanent? And one of the ways I talk about this, that particularly for people who don't agree with me, but who can't even see how do I make it visible, what I think marriage is, and certainly what I've been trying to do with my own marriage and what I want to pass on to my children. I say, well, take the analogy to parenthood, right? Being a mother. To me, can I make being a wife like being a mother in this sense that, yes, I think being a mother is an extremely satisfying and emotionally intense and gratifying and certainly love-generating relationship. But my relationship with my child isn't defined by that love. It's the relationship that gives birth to the love. So my child is my child, even if I'm not finding it a very satisfying relationship. I can't really imagine, going to a court and being declared not a mother. And so I think one of the key questions with a marriage today, with a really powerful marriage culture, is to understand, can we, in taking that vow, really change the reality? Can I make being a wife or a husband as powerful and permanent a change in reality and identity as becoming a mother still is for most people? And another way of saying that is love. Can we make love reliable? Or is love another word for a set of pleasing internal sensations? And when those sensations stop, then the love thing is over. That's the challenge, I think, for family life. And at the heart of the challenge, the thing that connects it all, is this thing called marriage. What do we think about it? What is it? What are we doing? Is it worth doing? And what are the alternatives? And I think the alternative, here's our strongest case. Deep in the human heart, there is a longing to both receive and to give love in a way that's reliable, to be a source of love as well as a recipient of reliable love. And marriage is our attempt to take the love between men and women out of the realm of the contingent and the dispensable, and to give it a permanent, real, external reality. That's what makes marriage different than romance or friendship, and what makes it uniquely admirable and worth aspiring to. Mothers, women play an important facilitating relationship, in terms of information gathering and exchanging that men are less good at doing for themselves. So when the mother and the father don't see themselves as being part of the same family, fathers lose access to that advantage of the mother's relation, of building off the mother's relationship with the children. Then there's the reality that when men and women part, when they're no longer married or they don't get married, they don't tend to remain celibate. They go on and develop other relationships. Those relationships compete, the ex-husband's new wife or girlfriend, hopefully she's not directly hostile to his relationship with the children, but that's all time taken away from her family, and their interest. It's people manage the conflict better or worse, but the point is there's a conflict now created. There's a problem to be solved. You see places where marriage has completely disappeared, as in in the inner city in America. The results are, first of all, poverty, economic problems for the children, a constant churning of romantic partnerships, right? And You take a man and you ask him to be a good father, when by the time he's 25, he has 3 different children with several different women who live in different places, and then he has a new romantic partner who doesn't really want him going back to these women he used to sleep with and had children with, right? It's just not hard to see why this doesn't really work. It's not a sustainable family system. And to make the decision that marriage doesn't matter is to make the decision that it doesn't matter whether parents raise their children together. It doesn't matter whether children have access to their mother and father. It doesn't matter the family as a unit, as an idea, as a concept. Many, many other things are more important to us than the family. So I think there's never been a system where marriage is perfect or 100%. You have to care about children, and all, regardless of their parents' family structure. But among the things we have to care about, if we're serious about child well-being, about equality, or about opportunity, is marriage. Now, in the last 5 years, I think there are a number of think tanks in a variety of countries being born. The Iona Institute in Ireland is another one that comes to mind. And the bad news is that they're being born out of a problem. Obviously, there's a recognition in every developed country, all of the places that are otherwise best for human flourishing. So stable, democratic, rule of law, affluent, opportunity societies are all suddenly having problems around the family. Every small, tribe in Africa knew how to bring men and women together to make and raise the next generation. Now, in these societies, our societies that are so good at so many things, we're finding this a problem. And yet the heartening thing is that rather than accepting it as an inevitability, we're beginning to try to develop new strategies. Obviously, there is something about developed nations that is hostile to family life in a new way. And so the answer isn't to retreat from the benefits of liberal, stable, affluent, opportunity societies, but to address, to give new ways of thinking about, defining, understanding, and coming up with solutions for the unique problems of that families face. And so I think what Family Watch is doing is extremely important, and that you should realize, first of all, that you're part of a broad international trend, that it's not simply in Spain, that everywhere around the world we are finding we're very good at making automobiles and scientific discoveries and establishing public order, and we are creating societies that are welcoming to children and in which love between men and women finds a stable and life-affirming home. These things are becoming very hard. And so, I don't know, perhaps I hope it's not simply an American trait, but I do say, when we go to America, when we find out something's a problem, we don't just throw up our hands and say, oh, there's nothing you can do about it. We roll up our sleeves, we get to work. There's always a way to make something a little bit better rather than a little bit worse. In terms of advice I would have, I think intellectual networks are extremely important. That you have to, there are more serious scholars who are more concerned about problems in family life, divorce, unmarried childbearing, fatherlessness than you know. If these people are isolated, it's not the individual genius, it's the network that matters. And we need to create intellectual communities where people can think about the problems, define the problems, apply scientific method and research to sources of the problems, and point towards possible solutions. And so I think that that's an extremely important function. The other thing I see, that the other way that progress happens is you need to grow communities of health. So we need to find a way under adverse modern conditions, postmodern conditions, of creating communities where family life flourishes, where marriage remains a known ideal, where the idea of being a wife or a husband or a mother and father are respected, and where these ideals can be transmitted in an effective way to our own children. And I think that if we do that, we will find a few generations down the road that the culture in general has changed quite a bit, because the future really does belong to people who have children. Those are the people who are making the future happen.